Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here with Emmanuel Perker at Stratodesk. Hey, Emmanuel, how you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, it's good to have you here.
Oh.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Stratodesk. What do you do?
So Stratodesk is a software thin client VDI endpoint company. Now that is a mouthful, but what it means, it's very simple to explain. Actually, we make corporate IT better, specifically end user computing, by putting our thin, carefully crafted, very secure endpoint operating system on existing hardware, PCs, thin clients, whatever is out there. We even run on the Raspberry Pi. And this system then allows this hardware that is on the user's desk to connect to a Windows operating system that is hosted in the data center or the cloud. Why would you do that? It's three reasons: it's cost, it's security, and manageability.
And so how would somebody, how does a client think of using your platform? Obviously, they've got all these devices that are out. Everybody's mobile now, so they've got laptops or phones or tablets. So tell me a little bit about this. It's a piece of hardware and software that plugs into your device. Is that how that works?
So we Stratodesk, we are purely software only, but obviously any kind of software needs a piece of hardware to run.
Mm-hmm.
One of these uniquenesses of us is that we are hardware agnostic. This means much more if we think how this market has evolved. It was traditionally a hardware market. You would buy a certain device that comes with some piece of software that's already inside. You then cannot easily switch from one to another because your brand name A device is different than brand name B device, with very different management software, etc. So most CIOs, people who are responsible for, in our world, anything could be 25,000 PCs, could be 50,000, 100,000, but also say 300 PCs. They face the same challenges. You have PCs with different versions of Windows. They might have already decided to buy thin clients for these obvious benefits that the VDI installation gives them, but then they are still suffering from that vendor lock-in. And we come in and we have this one solution that talks to all these VDI solutions, cloud-based, Microsoft AVD, Windows 365, Citrix Cloud, VMware Cloud, as well as the data center-based solutions. Everyone knows Citrix, VMware Horizon, on any kind of hardware. And this is really a critical differentiator, that you have this one piece. It's almost a bit like a middleware that goes there, and then it gives you the freedom also as a CIO to change your mind, right? You can go from one to another.
Right. And so it's really interesting because this thin client then gives you this interoperability and security layer across all of these software platforms and hardware devices. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
That's really interesting. And so who are your customers? Like, who's the profile of the kind of company that you work with and that you like to work with? And then who within the company is the actual buyer?
So what's interesting is that we are sector neutral. The key point is that you are, as a buyer, be the company or a person, you're responsible for a certain number for PCs. So let's say you have somewhat 100 PCs, you feel the pain. You have 200 PCs, you feel pain. 300, you feel 1,000 PCs, you feel even more pain. These things. If you have just one PC, right, you will probably say, my own personal PC, I can take care of that. I do the Windows updates. I make sure these work. but it multiplies. So anyone, and it could be a local government, for example, a county, a city, a manufacturing company, banks, insurance, hospitals, specifically healthcare, they have high user mobility. People want to go from one station to another. So this is where the solution really has its benefits. But I guess the coolest thing is it's sector neutral. Anyone can benefit from it once you have a certain number of PCs, more than one, essentially.
And so tell me a little bit about the security side of it. How does it help create security for those devices?
So one of the problems you have in a standard environment meaning you have hardware PCs with locally installed Windows, is you need to make sure that each Windows PC installs Windows updates properly. So we have heard these stories, during COVID, people took their hardware home because it was only supposed to be 2 weeks, right? Remember that 2 weeks
Right.
watching Netflix and save the world. And then ultimately people find out that there are corporate-owned devices that haven't gotten Windows updates for over 400 days, simply because they think at the user's home it couldn't connect to the WSUS server, so it didn't get the updates. So, and I mean, I guess I don't need to say anything to that, right? No Windows updates for 400 days. That doesn't sound good. So that is one thing. The second thing is what we do is the operating system itself has a very, very minimal attack surface. So it's very unlike a Windows that has all these features, all these open ports. Our operating system, no touch, it has 0 open ports. So that is a whole different story. And obviously, since the data is in the data center or in the cloud, wherever you host your Windows, that means if you lose the hardware by theft or just ordinary loss, you have lost the hardware, nothing else. Your data is still in the data center.
Yeah. And so I'm fascinated by this kind of a business. Tell me a little bit about the origin story of the company. How did you start the company?
So I started Stratodesk in 2010. The mission was clearly and still is to disrupt the hardware-based thin client market, simply because I felt customers shouldn't have to buy a box just to replace another box and essentially spend the same amount of money for the so-called thin box as they had paid for the so-called fat box before, when actually everything that sets this thing, the so-called thin client, apart from the fat client is software anyway. And so I had been in this market before, exposed to that world, and I couldn't believe it. I said, why? This is not right. We want to do this in software and give tremendous cost savings to our customers.
And inevitably, if you have 2 different devices, one of those devices is not going to get used often, and then you have holes, and so it doesn't work anyway. So having software is really the way to go. So it's all on one device. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Tell me how the company generates revenue.
So our main product, the flagship product, is called a No Touch. No Touch is a combination of the endpoint operating system, obviously what we have talked about, as well as a management software that comes with it. So that means you would buy, say, 100 or 1,000 licenses for No Touch. So it's a per workstation model. And then you would install a management software. You can download this, run in your own data center, or consume it as a cloud service. This is also unique about Stratodesk. You can consume it as a SaaS type service. Customers typically run it, and the license is perpetual. So that means they can use it forever. We have a subscription for the updates. So they can be current, and several add-on products.
I see. And so I see that you serve different verticals, several different verticals. Are all those different verticals using the same software implementation, or do they have industry specific kinds of capabilities?
Yes, it's the same software version, although there are things built in that are industry specific. So for example, federal government has certain needs like specific smart cards, depending if military or civilian. Hospitals have different login solutions like tap in, tap out. You know, you wave your badge to an RFID reader. There might also be dictation devices, which are very popular in certain segments. So there are sector-specific things, but they are all in this one piece of software. It's not like hospital would get a different software than a law firm. It's in one and the same operating system.
I see. And so in terms of your go-to-market strategy, how are you going to market? Are you going direct to the customer? Are you working with VARs, or what's your go-to-market?
So it's channel. We are definitely a channel company.
Mm-hmm.
We have actually started when Stratodesk was very young and very startup-y. Of course, we had to do direct business because, you know, if you're really young, you have to prove yourself in the market. But
Yes.
we have started the effort then to shift all this over to channel, and we are very happy. I'm very happy with that. We have some very good channel partnerships.
That's wonderful. And so with your channel partnerships, how do you get those channel partnerships to sell Stratodesk versus something else? What are some ways that that you help that channel become successful, that channel partner?
Well, so by saying we are a channel company, or we're converting to a channel company, obviously the channel partners look very closely at us and say, what do you have to offer, right? Yeah. And so being channel friendly means that we need to take support serious in terms of you have somebody going out there presenting your product. We are there 100%. We have also very flexible licensing term, very channel friendly licensing terms. So I guess one of the promises is that we have is, you know, we don't want to send somebody out and then the person has issues and then the manufacturer, the vendor is not flexible enough or doesn't help. You know, this won't happen with Stratodesk. So we will never leave you alone.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I imagine there's a fair amount of training that happens with each channel partner that you bring on board. What does that look like when you bring on a new channel partner?
Yeah, so actually, the product is designed in a way that it is easy to use. Certainly, we are speaking about IT people here who can use this management software, for example. The operating system is made in a way, believe it or not, that an end user is able to set it up and do those minimum basic configuration steps to connect to Wi-Fi, etc. So this is something that was unspeakable in this market until a few years ago, or essentially until we started rolling out our updates, simply because we have work from home, hybrid work. So that is not so much the problem. Obviously, people want very deep controls, security policies, and this is where the training is important. Customers ask questions like, how can these people be prohibited from USB, but only when they are working on that station, etc., etc.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so it looks like you developed a lot of content. We're a content company. I love when people lean into content and tell their story. What value has content marketing added to your company?
I think that's extremely important, also because, you know, what we do, it is evolving fast. It sounds as if, yeah, it's a simple explanation, what will change, Windows is still Windows, but in fact it is not. And there are so many things that are constantly being added, not so much that we would always want to add something, but the world changes around us. There are good ideas here, there. We have ideas, we have new features, we hear things, how customers have new problems, and especially during COVID times, a lot has changed. You know, they work from home, and now hybrid work has changed processes a lot,
Yes,
internal IT processes, as much as the way we go over things. And these are things you have to explain, right? And this all translates to content ultimately.
absolutely. I love it. So I guess my last question is, you're doing a lot of planning for growth this next year. A year from now, what would you like to be celebrating?
Yeah, so that is a good question. We are indeed growing year over year. We have some growth targets. I would want to see the company again doubling in revenue, in general size, team size. We are on a very good track.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations, Emmanuel. It sounds like you guys have been growing the business steadily, and it's an exciting space. I think this area of all the fragmentation and the challenges with that, you're solving a lot of that problem for CIOs and CTOs globally. So congratulations to you for that.
Absolutely. Thanks very much.
My pleasure. Emmanuel from Stratodesk, thank you.
Thank you too.